Obviously, for a decision to be taken by the cabinet, it will have to be advised by the Chief of Police. And I'll be meeting with the Chief of Police this afternoon at 2:15 to engage him on the further steps he has taken to assure the security of the state. If you follow the news, I'm sure you do, and of course not necessarily yourself personally, but I'm speaking to the whole country, you would have recognized that the governor in one of the states, I believe South Carolina, declared a state of emergency several days in advance of the storm. And so this decision is taken to ensure that as far as practically humanly possible, all the necessary actions are taken to secure, first, lives. Plus our first priority is to ensure that lives are protected and secured. And secondly, our earthly possessions. And these things are done not necessarily to control people's movements, but more so to protect them. Because as you know, in instances like that, it is always to take preemptive, precautionary measures rather than reactive measures. So you have an opportunity to better manage the process in the event of something happening beyond what we would like to happen. And you would have seen that we employed that strategy leading up to burial. And so that gave us an opportunity to assess the impact of declaring a state of emergency in advance of a disaster happening, in advance of the storm impacting the country. And this is not an invention on the part of the Commonwealth of Dominica. You see it happen in many parts of the world where preemptive, proactive actions are taken to ensure that those who are charged with the responsibility of providing services to our citizens before, during, and after a storm have the opportunity to do that on our behalf with little or no hindrances or obstacles in their way. And the fact remains too that if a storm is approaching and we've asked people to go to shelters and prepare themselves, there's really no need for most of us to be on the streets or to be liming or sightseeing. The people who should be really out there are those who are charged with the responsibility of providing the services to us, what we call essential services. So you don't necessarily take the decision to declare a state of emergency or curfew because you think that there may be some security risk to the country per se. Sometimes these are taken to ensure that there is a greater level of control of the space to allow the essential services to carry the duties. And fundamentally too, to protect people from themselves. Because we have to understand in a society, you have different makeup, human makeup, different people with different attitudes and different views and different considerations. And the state must not only be interested in the circumstances of someone's death, it must also ensure that it can help that person prevent his death where it can. So that there are a number of considerations, I believe, what we took into consideration when we declared a state of emergency curfew leading up to burial. Because the declaration for the state of emergency has to be properly published, and it must be known to the country, the length and breadth of the country, as required by law. And in a case where, for example, if you have all of your telecommunication systems down, no electricity, no radio communication, you may have a difficulty in communicating to the public on this. So there are a number of considerations that will be taken to declare this. But for as far as the NEPO is concerned, as far as the police is concerned, as far as the cabinet is concerned, if we declare a state of emergency and a curfew, it is really to secure the state and to secure human lives and to protect human lives and to ensure that those who are charged with the responsibility of providing services to us in this time, because the fact remains, while some of us, the majority of us, would be in our beds, maybe sleeping, maybe up, there are some of us who have to be in the streets. There are some of us who have to be at the health clinics and the hospitals. There are some of us who have to remain in our offices to coordinate things. You understand? And if these people can't get from point A to point B to provide that service to you, because we have hundreds of people just driving around and seeing how high the water is or how much rain is falling and so forth, then it creates a problem. You understand? So let's leave it to this afternoon when we hear from the police. So we will not deal with a hypothetical situation, but we'll deal with a practical situation. But just to say to you that it is not a decision that we take lightly, because for me personally, ideologically and philosophically, I have a difficulty in containing people's movement, people's mobility. You understand? People have a right to move from one point to another. But the drafters of our constitution and our laws recognize, and also is a global matter, recognize that there are circumstances for the safety of everyone that certain actions need to be taken to curtail the movement and the mobility of some or all in order to protect all. And that's how we look at it. So another decision we'll take because we want to get. But as you have seen in the United States, in Carolinas, I mean, the state of emergency may have been declared since Thursday, Friday of last week. You understand? Several days in advance. To allow the state agencies to be activated in a heightened emergency manner. And so everyone is focused on preparing those states to secure the citizens. And even in some countries, there are mandatory evacuation. So when they say you have to move, you have to be moved. There are some cases where they do not go through the full extent of mandatory evacuation, but they ensure that the state knocks on your door and goes to you, and if you decide to stay, then you're staying at your own risk. And they will say to you, do not expect us to come if you are in danger, because we're giving you a deadline by which to move. If you don't move by that deadline and something is happening to you, you are on your own, because the essential services, the police, the fire, the ambulance, the EMS, etc., will not risk their lives to come to save you because of your stupidity. You understand? So even if we do not have those laws in Dominica, the state has gone to great lengths to ensure that every community in Dominica has a hurricane shelter, and that the resources are made available to ensure that these things happen. There's a mix of public buildings and private properties, and we appreciate all those who have made those available. And the state has a mechanism. It has services, it has individual staff and resources to prepare the state for those eventualities. And we have to understand that so for example, a business owner might be in his bed sleeping, but the police is out there protecting his property. You see? And we have to understand that if we know that we live in our home is in a water path. So we had some flooding many times, and we're hearing rain is going to come, and we're hearing that there will be potential possibilities of flooding. Why do you want to stay in your home and leave when your home starts to flood? So we're saying to people that you have a responsibility to determine the safety or lack thereof of your property, and to make that personal family decision to relocate. There's nothing wrong with going to a shelter if you feel that, one, you may be alone and you have no help, you may be living in a vulnerable part, your home may be in a vulnerable location. You know, make a decision to go by a family or friend, or a shelter that has been declared as an official shelter. So the state of emergency is not something we take lightly, and curfew to curtail people's movement. But as we saw post Maria, had we not put this in place, the situation would have been even more difficult. And there are many people who do not respect the curfew, and who have to be brought before the courts. This is why for burial, the police position was that it was not going to accept and to tolerate anyone being on the streets. So I believe that there may have been some people who were arrested, from a report I saw, leading up to burial, because they were out during the curfew. And our position to the police is that you have to carry out your duties and your responsibilities according to law. And if a state of emergency is declared leading up to this tropical storm, and there's a curfew in place, every one of us, including myself, must respect it. You understand? So even if I had the authority to move, I insisted I needed to get a pass, even if I was being driven by the police. You see what I'm saying? I said, look, I need my pass. He said, no, you're fine. I said, no, I said, I need my pass. You know, you need to give me the pass signed by the chief of police so that I have it. I have one, you know, because my position was that if there are times I would have to maybe move myself, drive myself to, you know, and so I also meant to ensure that everybody respected the order. You understand? And that's why we need to do to help the situation, because at the end of the day, we will do all that we can at NIPO and ODM, etc., etc. But if we individual citizens don't play our part, we're going to have a challenge. Sorry for a very long response to what appeared to have been a very straightforward question, but I felt it necessary to give that long response, an explanation to clarify this stuff, because I know that there has been concerns in the public domain about state of emergency. There are some who felt that we went too far in preparing for burial and so forth. But I rather go too far than to fall short and have a problem. So the position of government, the position of NIPO, is that we will go to the fullest extent possible, humanly possible. Now, everything is not perfect, so we don't have a perfect system. We don't have a watertight system. I want to say this up front, you know, but as far as humanly possible to prepare the state. You understand? And that's our position going forward. Anytime we face with such, we're going to put a serious, robust system in place to prepare the citizens. Yeah.
Anything else? Anybody from the media? Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you.
But I want to thank you, and of course thank the media. I would suggest respectfully to the media that we avoid paraphrasing things. You know, let us play the voices of those who have spoken, and so let them say exactly what they have said, because in paraphrasing we may use a different tense, or we may use a comma in the wrong place, and we change the meaning of the entire statement. That is just English 101, you know. So have a wonderful day. Thank you.